Hey there. So for the next few videos, we are going to be talking about the ancient Near East, which is located right about here on our great big map of the world. Now, you may be used to seeing or hearing this part of the world referred to as the Middle East. And that's not wrong. The terms Near East and Middle East can kind of be used interchangeably to mean this part of the world right here. So let's take a closer look. And before we start to talk about the history and the cool stuff that the people who lived here did, I want to kind of help you get the lay of the land a bit. So we're going to first start off by talking about these large bodies of water that sort of hem in the land that we're going to be talking about. Boom. So here you go. You've got the Mediterranean Sea over here just north of Egypt and just south of Italy and Greece. You have the Black Sea just north of Turkey. The Caspian Sea's out here. The Persian Gulf is over here by modern-day Saudi Arabia. And the Red Sea is separating this Arabian Peninsula from Egypt and the rest of Africa. And then way out here you've got the Arabian Sea. So that kind of gives you an idea of the bounds of the land that we're working with. Now let's start to talk about some of the geographical features that we're going to find in these regions. I think the most important geographical features we're going to see are rivers. So let's take a look at the rivers that existed in this area where modern-day Iraq is. This area we're going to call Mesopotamia. It's actually called Mesopotamia. It's a Greek-derived word that means between two rivers. And we're going to see that we've got two rivers that kind of go like this, and Mesopotamia is going to be settled largely in between them. So here's how those rivers go. They start up here and they flow southwards towards the Persian Gulf, but it's about 1,000,000 times easier to draw them going the other way, so that's what I'm going to do. So come up from the Persian Gulf and then they split. So the Euphrates comes along this way and runs roughly like that. And then the Tigris splits here. They kind of come back close to each other before kind of branching off like that. So here you go, you've got the Tigris and the Euphrates River flowing down this way towards the Persian Gulf. Now, what's going on here in terms of elevation, in terms of mountains? Well, I happen to have a handy-dandy relief map queued up that we can take a look at that will show us what is going on here in terms of elevation. So as you can see, we do have some mountains kind of going around the north of this river system and then down away to the east. So right here's the Euphrates, here's the Tigris, and here are our mountains. So let me go ahead and draw those in. I'm going to draw those in with orange, and I'm just going to do some sort of crude little mountain peaks here so we know what's going on. Mountains. Mountains going down this way. Yay, you shall not pass. Very, very scary. Okay, so here are our mountains that generally make it difficult to sort of hang out and get through, as opposed to the more even land that we've got around here. So that's generally what the Mesopotamia area looks like. Remember, Mesopotamia, between rivers. So now let's take a little detour and look at Egypt. So if I were to ask you what the most important, what the most distinctive geographical feature of ancient Egypt was, you might just say that it was the Nile. And if you were to say the Nile, I would say yes, that's very smart. So let's go ahead and take a look at where the Nile runs. We're going to start up here at the Mediterranean Sea. A river's going to kind of snake down, and then it's going to curve here. And now it's going to split. It splits into two tributaries. So this is the Nile, and it goes like this and kind of curves around to hook up with Lake Tana right there. This is the Blue Nile. The Blue Nile goes through the Ethiopian highlands right here, and then the other tributary goes a little farther south. This is going to kind of snake around like this before hooking up with these lakes and winding up here in Lake Victoria, here in the Great Lakes region of Africa. So that is roughly what the Nile looks like. Let's go ahead and label that river and its tributaries. There, here you've got the Nile and its two tributaries, the Blue Nile and the White Nile. Now let's take a look at the elevation of this area. I've also got this handy-dandy topographical map of the Nile. And this map I like a lot because it comes with this lovely little legend, which is going to tell you exactly what the elevation is. It's sort of color-coded. So the more reddish brown the land looks, the higher in elevation it is. And the greener it is, the lower it is, or the closer to sea level, which is more or less as low as it gets, more or less. So you'll notice that we've got some elevated areas here and here. So let's go ahead and draw those in. We've got some mountain peaks around here. These are called the Ethiopian highlands, around the source of the Blue Nile. And then down here, closer to Lake Victoria, we've got some peaks as well, and just some general kind of elevated plains. You'll also notice that this area, kind of like right around the river, tends to be more green, which means it's lower. And so the reason for that is that as the river kind of flows this way, flows across the earth, it carves a groove for itself, right? It carves itself a groove, making the land lower and lower and lower. So that's kind of how that works, and that's why you'll often have these river valleys, where the area around the land around a river is lower than the land elsewhere. So there are our Ethiopian highlands. And so what I really want you to notice is that the areas of higher elevation are down here in the south. So the Nile runs south to north, right? It goes from the higher area, gravity does its thing, and pulls it down to the lower lands here near where the Mediterranean is. And at the mouth of the Nile, where the Nile spills out into the Mediterranean Sea, we have what's called a delta. So a delta is when a river that's in the process of spilling out into a bigger body of water develops these little streamlets here, and it forms kind of a triangular shape like that. That's called a delta. These little streamlets do a really good job of getting water to this land around here. So this type of land tends to be very fertile. So this Nile River delta right here is going to be very important to the Egyptians. So we're now getting a pretty good idea of what the land around here looked like. We do have these big black spaces here, though. So what's up with that? Well, you may know that this is the Sahara Desert, and this is also desert. So not a lot in the way of rain or arable land or land that you can farm on going on right here. So really the only places that you might be able to grow crops and that you might want to sort of settle down at are right around here. And for that reason, we call this area the Fertile Crescent, because you can see it kind of like makes a crescent shape here. This is where the really fertile land was. This was the land that was really good for settling down, growing some crops, feeding a lot of people, and building a civilization. And this area, this Fertile Crescent area, is where we're going to be spending most of our time over the next few videos. We're going to be learning about the ancient Egyptians that lived here and the Mesopotamians that lived here between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers.